Hello and greetings, class. My name is Andrew Ramirez, and today for my Plato project, I'll be talking about Crito. And the two themes I'll be talking along with Crito is the nature of virtue and the ascent to the good. So in Crito is going to be one of the most important dialogues that we read, because when we read from Crito, we're going to be understanding more of Socrates' moral philosophy of what he's talking about. And so along with this, I will be making three parallels to the Republic, Apology, and to the Phaedo as well. And so Crito, it is one of the more shorter dialogues that is read, but it does raise some of the biggest questions in philosophy, such as, what does it mean to live justly? What do we owe to the law? And is it ever right to break the rules for a good cause? What this is going to do is going to invite us, the dialogue is going to invite us to think about how far are we willing to go to protect our principles when we are tested. So now, to be able to set the stage, let's summarize Crito. So to summarize Crito, we have Socrates. He's in prison, and he's there on two charges. And these are the two charges of why he's in prison. So first and foremost, he has shown impiety towards the gods. And then the second charge is towards corrupting the youth of Athens. And these are the two charges of why Socrates is in prison awaiting his execution. But then Crito, Socrates' friend, comes in early on in the dawn of morning. He sneaks into the prison and goes to Socrates' cell, and he tries to help him escape. But Socrates refuses. But then Crito, he starts this whole argumentation of why Socrates should escape from prison. And this is Crito's argumentation. He says that Socrates should escape for the sake of the very people that is in his life, for his friends and for his family. Because if Socrates goes through with the execution, then what it's going to do is it's going to make his friends look like cowards, and he's going to be abandoning his family by going through with it. And that's Crito's argumentation, that he should leave for the sake of his people, for the people in his life, and for his own personal self. But Socrates, he refuses Crito's argumentation with this question. Socrates says, "Is it just? Is it just? Is it just for me to escape from prison for the sake of the people in my own life and for my own personal self, when by the Athenians I have broken their laws?" And so what is truly just here? For me to escape or for me to stay? Because what ultimately the next question that it's going to raise is this, is what is the right thing to do? What is the right thing to do, right? What is the right thing to do? So asking ourselves, what is just here to do, to escape or to stay, and then what is the right thing to do here, right? So now that we have our stage set, now let's dive into our themes. So let's talk about, first and foremost, virtue, right? The nature of virtue. So Socrates argues that virtue is not flexible or situational. You don't get to be virtuous only when it's easy. Virtue is grounded in reason, right? It's grounded in reason, in knowing what is right and sticking to it, even when it costs you something, and especially when it costs you everything. right? You stick to what is right because it is truly right. Because Socrates makes a key claim here. He says that one must never commit injustice, even in response to injustice. So he believes that the soul is harmed by injustice, and harming the soul is worse than any physical punishment that one can endure. So even if the city wronged him, he refuses to wrong the city back by escaping. It's like saying, yo, fight fire with fire. And Socrates says, no, we cannot fight fire with fire. He rejects that idea completely. And this is where Socrates becomes a model of moral consistency. He doesn't just talk about virtue. He truly lives it out in his own life. He doesn't just talk the talk. He walks the walk. He doesn't just, he practices what he preaches. His stance challenges us to consider whether we value our moral integrity more than our own comfort and safety. So again, with the nature of virtue, it is not based on situational things, right? It's not based on situational things, but rather by being in a state of virtue, we are guided by reason. We never commit injustice because injustice has been committed to us, right? Because again, we ask ourselves, is that really the right thing to do if injustice or something bad happens to us? Is that truly virtuous, right? So that's virtue. Now let's move on here with our second theme, being the ascent to the good. So with the ascent to the good, Crito doesn't explicitly mention the form of the good, but Socrates, through his reasoning, right, he does reflect this upward movement towards the good, and we do see that in Plato's other works. Socrates is guided by a higher moral order, something beyond fear, beyond desire, or even his own personal gain. He cares more about the health of his very soul, more than the very survival of his own body. This orientation towards what is ultimately right is what Plato means by the soul's ascent towards the good. Because in Plato's philosophy, the good is the highest reality, right? So the good is going to be the highest reality. Right? So, by being able to commit ourselves to the good, right, we are going towards the highest reality. And so, with the good being the highest reality, right, the good is truly the source of truth, justice, and meaning. Socrates' refusal to escape from prison shows us an example of being able to live out the good, of ascending towards the good, and orienting our lives towards that higher truth being truly lived out. He's not thinking like an ordinary person would. Who just wants to avoid pain and suffering altogether. He's not thinking in those terms. He's thinking like someone who has trained his soul to love what is right. And this is an upward movement of the soul, is what separates the philosopher from the ordinary person in Plato's worldview. And so, to bring a key connection here with both our two themes here of virtue and the good is this. Soul. The soul is greater than the body and consequences. Right? So, regardless of whatever happens, right? Whatever physical harm you could experience, whatever consequence, whatever outcome occurs, that's not what's worse. What is worse, what can be truly harmful is damaging the soul, because the soul is greater than the body, any consequence that can occur, or pretty much anything else, any other fourth thing that you can think of, because in Socrates' view, the soul is what is truly greatest here. Okay, so now let's move in here with our three parallels with our project here. So with our first parallel being connected to the Republic, right? So Plato describes virtue as harmony in the soul. It's reason ruling over your appetite. In Crito, we see this harmony in real time. Socrates' reasoning controls his fear and desire. He doesn't panic. He doesn't get emotional, doesn't act on emotion. He acts rationally. This is the philosopher king mindset that Socrates demonstrates. That a person whose rationale, that he understands, he is guided, and he's able to make just decisions. And Socrates becomes a living example of the ideal citizen that Plato is describing. And this shows that his behavior shows what it looks like when the rationale part of the soul governs the whole person. And so, along with this, there are two allegories that I do want to bring in to make a connection. So the first allegory being the allegory of the cave. So along with the allegory of the cave, right, we have the cave, we have shadows that are cast onto the wall, and then prisoners, right? So the connection that I want to make here is that Socrates is the one prisoner that has fled from the cave, from the prison, from the shadows, and is on the outside and has witnessed truth, right? So all these other prisoners, while they are stuck in the cave, witnessing these shadows being cast onto the wall, they're witnessing lies, things that are not true. But Socrates has seen the truth. He sees things as they truly are and comes to a greater comprehension and understanding of what things truly are because he has witnessed the truth. And the second allegory that I would like to make a connection to is the allegory of the charioteer. So with the allegory of the charioteer, we have reason. Reason is a charioteer, and then it has two horses, right? Which is spirit and desire, right? So with the allegory of the charioteer, the charioteer is reason, and then we have its two horses that we see here, which is spirit and desire, right? So spirit, it is courage and honor, and desire could be things more of emotion and pleasure, right? And if Socrates were to allow one of these two horses to lead where the charioteer is going, it wouldn't probably go in the proper way, right? Because to say if it were to be led by the spirit, sure, it may be courageous and honorable, but if reason is not a part of spirit, then is it truly as it is as courage, or is it more so mindless actions, right? Mindless actions that may not lead to the desired outcome, right? And then with desire, with emotion and pleasure, right, they may lead to things of the body, things of worldly things, right? Things that don't matter so much, that are not connected to the soul, right? So Socrates, by being in the seat of reason, he is guiding both spirit and desire within himself, right? And by being able to be reason, by being able to use that within his mind, he's able to guide both spirit and desire, the chariot, in the most logical pathway. Right? All right. So now let's move on here with our second parallel with Crito and Phaedo. So in the Phaedo, Socrates describes philosophy as training for death. The philosopher prepares the soul to detach from bodily concerns and focuses on eternal truth. In Crito, we see this same attitude being played out. Socrates accepts death willingly and calmly because he believes escaping would corrupt his soul. He sees death not as the end or not as the worst thing that can happen or that could occur, but it's a transition. Death is a transition, is how Socrates sees it, and that the real danger is not death itself, but the real danger here is moral failure, not physical death. And this connection is going to show how unified Socrates is with his own worldview across all dialogues. His calmness in both works demonstrates that his philosophy is not theoretical, but is deeply lived. As I believe, as I had stated earlier, again, he practices what he preaches. He doesn't just talk the talk, he walks the walk, right? Because he truly believes it, right? And so, again, the soul is what is most important to Socrates. And that by being able to keep the soul in the pure state, we are striving to the good, which is the highest reality, right? So by being able to, through his philosophy, we're training ourselves for death. We're training ourselves to be able to accept it as it is, because it will happen, regardless if you like it or not. It's something that will happen. It's going to happen, right? By being able to learn to accept it, we are keeping the soul in a pure state, and we are ascending to the good, which is the highest reality. Now, let's move on here with our third parallel, which is Crito connecting to the Apology. So, in the Apology, Socrates refuses to stop practicing philosophy, even when he is threatened with death, with his very own execution. In both of these cases, he chooses integrity over survival. He chooses principles over fear. He chooses the good over convenience. This shows Socrates' consistency, again, across all dialogues. He's consistent in every way. He's consistent. He is the same person in court and in prison, and even at the very moment of his own death. He is the same person across all playing fields. And this consistency is part of why Socrates remains such a powerful moral figure in Western philosophy. Because at Socrates' very core, he keeps his integrity intact. And by keeping his integrity intact, he sees his philosophy more important than his very own survival. Because what his philosophy has led to is, again, these things, right? To these things of the soul, right? Of leading the soul to what is pure and to the good, and by getting there by virtue, right? These are the principles that he believes in, and these are the very principles that he has kept in every single situation that he has been in. And so now, to bring this project to its conclusion, Crito is not just about whether Socrates should escape prison. It was never about that. That was never the question that was on the table about whether Socrates should escape prison or not, right? Even though Crito is in prison and he's arguing with Socrates, telling him that he should escape, that's not the question. That's not what it's about. What it is truly about is, what does it mean to truly live a virtuous life? What does it truly mean to live that out? Because Socrates shows that virtue requires consistency, courage, and a commitment to the good. These three things. A commitment to the good. Of being able to stay loyal to what is right and just. By being able to be courageous, even though if there is danger, if there is suffering, and even if there is death that is ahead of you, right? You're still going to do it. You're still going to pursue that thing. You're still going to seek it out because you know that at the end, there's a good there. And by being able to be courageous, we're pursuing that good. Because courage is not the absence of fear, but it's the willingness to take on fear as it is. And lastly, consistency. By being able to make these decisions, these very choices in our lives on a consistent and daily basis. To always choose to be courageous, to always choose to commit and be loyal to what is the good. His decision reflects the same philosophical principles that we see across Plato's works: the harmony of the soul, the pursuit of truth, and the belief that the soul's health is what is most important, and it is not the body's safety. The soul is what is most important. And ultimately, in Crito teaches us that true virtue is never negotiable, and that a just life is worth more than a long life. What Socrates leaves us with is a challenge. And that challenge is this, is to be able to ask ourselves whether we too would be willing to be able to stand firm in our principles when everything is on the line. When everything is on the line, are you willing to stand firm for your principles? Are you willing to stay true to them? Because how I see it is that when we stay firm to our principles and stick truly to what we see to be truth, virtue, and the good, then I say truly at the end of our existence, we will have lived full and authentic human lives.